The history of Memphis, Tennessee. This history of Memphis, Tennessee will certainly interest you. However, we feel good about starting by introducing you to this city in the southwestern part of the U.S. state of Tennessee. Situated along the Mississippi River, the city has a population of 633,104, according to the 2020 U.S. Census. Based on that figure, it's the second most populous city in the state of Tennessee after Nashville, the fifth most populous in the southeast, and the 28th most populous overall in the nation, and the largest city on the border of the Mississippi River. Please join us in this retrospective view of Memphis, Tennessee. And one more thing, please. Kindly find a talking point in this historical analysis to comment on after watching this video. Early history of Memphis, Tennessee. From the reliable available historical records, the history of Memphis, Tennessee can be traced back to many thousands of years ago. The city and area began appearing in history with succeeding cultures of indigenous peoples. An offshoot of this rich history can be traced to about 10,000 BCE, when Paleo-Indians, and later Archaic Indians, were dwelling as communities of hunter-gatherers in that area now covering the modern-day southern U.S. However, in the first millennium, approximately 800 CE to 1600 CE, the area, precisely the Mississippi River Delta, was settled by the Mississippian culture. These were the mound-building Native Americans who had emerged in the late Woodland Indian period. They lived in the region that is now modern-day Tipton, Lauderdale, and Shelby. The Chickasaw Indian tribe appeared on the Memphis historical scene in about the 17th century CE. Probably through migration into the area, by the end of the Mississippian period, the Chickasaw tribe claimed and populated the area. While the origin of the Chickasaw cannot be historically ascertained, as opinions vary, they are believed to be migrants from present-day Mexico who moved to the north. They are not likely to be descendants of the prehistoric Mississippian culture, based on the findings of 20th century scholar Patricia Galloway, who deduced that the Chickasaw and Choctaw may have migrated to the area from the west. European exploration. At any rate, the Chickasaw were the ones dwelling in the areas that now include modern-day Memphis when the Europeans first explored the area. When Europeans first encountered Chickasaw, the people were living in villages that make up Mississippi today. A smaller number of them were in the area of Savannahtown in South Carolina. The earliest record of European exploration is that of Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto. History has it that he, with his team, visited what is now Memphis in the 1540s, or as early as thereabout. More than a century later, in the 1680s, the Frenchman René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de la Salle led a team of French explorers to build Fort Prudhomme in the vicinity. That was the first European settlement in what later became Memphis. Despite several French outposts and other efforts by the Europeans, the land remained a largely unorganized territory for most of the 18th century, as it belonged to no one specific European nation. Following the admission of the state of Tennessee into the newly independent United States, the site became the westernmost point of Tennessee in 1796. However, the Chickasaw tribe occupied and historically controlled West Tennessee was up till then owned by possession and tribal rights. On April 3, 1790, a town at Chickasaw Bluffs was promoted with leases offered by John Rice of Cumberland. It was also thought to be purchased for families arriving at the landing not far from the mouth of the Big Hacha River. Memphis incorporation as a city. Around this time, no city had yet been named Memphis in the entire area of West Tennessee. However, following its purchase by federal government from the Chickasaw Nation in 1818, the area became available for white settlement. Subsequently, Memphis was founded on May 22, 1819 in the area. It was a brainchild of a group of investors known as John Overton, James Winchester, and Andrew Jackson. The idea was to have a large city built on that site. It was incorporated as a city in 1826 and named Memphis, after the ancient capital of Egypt. The founders purposed the city with a plan featuring a regular grid of streets that would be interrupted by 4 town squares, namely Exchange, Market, Court, and Auction. You can still see 3 of these squares, Market, Court, and Auction, as public parks in downtown Memphis. On the Mississippi River, Memphis became a departure point for Native Americans removed from their historic lands to Indian territory in the 1830s. According to 1831 French writer Alexis de Tocqueville, Choctaws were seen crossing the river at Memphis. The state of Mississippi called for the resurveying of the boundary with the state of Tennessee at the insistence of the young city of Memphis. Still, there was no way to have Memphis captured within Mississippi. Memphis, Tennessee during the Civil War. As the 19th century got underway, Memphis grew as a center for transporting, grading, and marketing cotton. It was already an important regional city thanks to its river trade and railroad connections, especially the Memphis and Charleston Railroad, which was the only east-west rail link across the South. During that time, growing volumes of cotton were being produced in the nearby Mississippi Delta, and the cotton economy elsewhere depended on the forced labor made of myriads of African American slaves. Memphis thus became a major slave market. Almost a quarter of the city's population were slaves by the time the Civil War broke out. When Tennessee seceded from the Union in 1861, Memphis served as a Confederate stronghold. However, Union forces wouldn't allow that to be, as they were moving down the Mississippi River. In the decisive Battle of Memphis on June 6, 1862, the Union troops captured Memphis from the Confederacy, and it permanently remained under Union control for as long as the war lasted. The Gayoso House Hotel was made the Union base in Memphis. The city became a Union supply base and enjoyed tremendous prosperity throughout the war. At some point, Memphis was a focus for illicit trade in raw cotton, which had become a scarce commodity for northern cotton mills since the start of the Union blockade and the Confederate embargo. The scourge of yellow fever in Memphis. The city emerged from the Civil War with little or no significant damage from the fighting. This could be one of the reasons Tennessee was the first of the southern states to be readmitted to the Union. It rejoined on July 24, 1866. Less than a decade later, however, the city had another attack which brought the destruction that the Civil War did not bring. The city was devastated by bouts of yellow fever in the 1870s. The epidemic struck 3 times within the decade. It claimed about 2,000 lives in 1873. It also came back in 1878 and 1879. On August 5, 1878, yellow fever was diagnosed and more than 25,000 people fled the city within 2 weeks. It was not known then that this deadly disease was carried by mosquitoes. Public health measures to curb it were unsuccessful. A number of missionaries remained in the city to care for the sick, in effect sacrificing themselves. Yellow fever also broke out in 1879. Since many people lost lives to the epidemics or fled the city to avoid untimely deaths, Memphis lost its city charter in 1879 and went bankrupt. In fact, when many were fleeing the town, gripped with terror, they left without remembering to close their doors. Of the 19,000 who remained in the city, 17,000 came down with the scourge, and 5,150 died. Memphis, Tennessee in the 20th century. Today, Memphis, Tennessee had recovered fully from all that befell it in the 19th century. The gains of the 21st century were a result of the progress the city made in the 20th century. The city developed as the largest spot cotton market in the world. It achieved the same status in the hardwood lumber market. In the 1950s, Memphis was the world's largest mule market. Also, the city's population grew nearly fourfold from 102,350 in 1900 to 396,000 in 1950, thanks to its ability to attract workers from rural areas and an influx of new immigrants. Even the extensive damage of the 2 world wars was unable to stagnate the development of the city. During the Second World War, for instance, the War Department built large supply depots in Memphis for the use of the Army and the Air Force. The depot also served as a camp for prisoners of war, housing 800 Axis prisoners. By 1997, when it closed, the Memphis Army Depot had 130 buildings on site and more than 370,000 square meters of enclosed industrial space. We sure have a lot more to glean from this rich history of Memphis. Kindly tell us in your comments your thoughts about the history of Memphis in this video. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.